Thank you all for being here today. I feel among friends and colleagues and fellow seekers, and that's the spirit in which I want to share what I'm sharing today. Not as so much as a teacher, but as a fellow seeker. So this workshop is about theosophy and how we can apply it to life's real challenges. We are having, we are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that human experience can become challenging and quite tough at times. And it is only in the discovery of the day-by-day experience that we walk this that we call the spiritual path. Theosophy as divine wisdom is primarily something that we can experience, because it is, in a way, the nature of reality. And we all have the capacity to experience the nature of reality. So that is what primarily theosophy or divine wisdom is. Then that understanding has been put in teachings. It has been put in teachings throughout the ages, and it has been put in teachings with the foundation of the Theosophical Society and H.P. Blavatsky as what we call now modern theosophy. So this is for us to know that theosophy is something that we can touch through perception. And I also shared in the talk this very interesting concept in Hindu philosophy that is called pramana. Pramana is a Sanskrit term that means proof or means of knowledge. And it is said that there are many ways through which we can acquire knowledge. At least, they divide it in many ways, but these three are the primary three ways of acquiring knowledge. The first one is through direct perception. And in that direct perception, if we observe our lives, the first thing with which we perceive is our senses. There is so much information, knowledge, so to speak, that comes to us through the senses, that really define a lot of our experiences. The senses define the way we feel, the way we think of the world, the way we think of ourselves, the way we think of others, and so on. Perception and knowledge comes through the direct perception of the mental world. All these thoughts and images that are so real to us. That is the way of perceiving. Even teachings. Perceptions through self-consciousness. We are capable of perceiving ourselves, knowing that we are alive. But there is also a direct perception that is called spiritual or intuitive. And this is the one that is said to be true knowledge. But for that, we need to develop spiritual senses in a way that we have available, that we have potential available, but not necessarily developed. The other way of knowledge is inference, which is a knowledge that follows. It's something that may refer to something else. It's a sign that tells us that something else is present. And then the last one is testimony, which can be oral or written, depending on the tradition. In the past, it used to be all oral transmission of the teachings. So theosophy, as a state of being, is the knowing of a living truth. And one of the teachers of H.P. Blavatsky defined real knowledge not as a mental state, but as a spiritual state. So knowledge real knowledge. It's not a mental, but a spiritual state. So as I was saying before, this type of knowledge at the level of a spiritual perception, that for them is real knowledge. And then it says it implies full union between the knower and the known. So it implies that the part of us that can know can become one with that which is trying to know. This has many, many, many layers of experience because it depends on the knower, the awakening of the knower, and what the knower is trying to know. But the ultimate experience of truth comes about when the knower or the witness, the one in us, the consciousness in us, become one with all. So one of the very important points that I want to make is that something that Joy Mills, a very well-known theosophist, mentioned in one of her articles that she called The Vitality of Living Truth. And she says that truth may be beyond conception in the sense that we may not be able to grasp intellectually some of the elements of truth. But however, truth can be experienced. So even if we consider that truth as an absolute is beyond conception, we may yet discover that as a reality, truth is not beyond experience. We can experience it. And then she repeats pretty much the same idea. It is essentially inherent in experience and in the experiencer when the distinction between the two has ceased to exist. In a moment, we're going to look at what does this really mean? What does it mean in practical terms that the distinction between the experience and the experiencer has ceased to exist? And just another reminder that I think is very, very important is that these teachings are meant to transform us. These teachings are not just elements for us to say, oh, I know this, I know that, I can explain this and I can explain that. These teachings are powerful elements to change our lives. And they work, and they are laws in nature. When we get to know how the laws of nature work, we can work with nature. Every cause has an effect. So whatever shift we make within ourselves has an impact in our lives, internally and externally. So Joy Mills says the experience of truth calls us to be other than we are. It transforms us from within so that we can never be the same again. One of the major points I want to make in this workshop is this one, that Jean de Salzmans makes in an article she wrote that is called The Reality of Being. She was a disciple of Gurdjieff, Jean de Salzmans. Many times we're looking at what is it that I need to do? We're so used to the fact that whenever something needs to change, it's because we need to do something. And she and others invite us to see that it is not so much what we need to do, but how to see. She says the question is not what to do, but how to see. Seeing is the most important thing, the act of seeing. And she's not referring to the seeing of the eyes. I need to realize that it is truly an act, an action that brings something entirely new, a new possibility of vision, certainty, and knowledge. This possibility appears during the act itself and disappears as soon as the seeing stops. It is only in this act of seeing that I will find a certain freedom. So what is she talking about with seeing? my understanding of it, as I look into the teachings of other teachers, is that we can live oblivious of what is actually happening because we're so involved in the thought, in the result, in the personal desire, and so on. We're not really in touch with life. We're in touch with what we think about life. We're in touch with what we expect from life. But we're not really in touch with life itself. Or very rarely we are. So she says the seeing is when, or happens when, the witness in us is observing, is witnessing, completely observing without interference of thought, of expectation, of wanting, of past, etc. in the process of seeing. To clarify a little bit more what this means, I'll bring the way Evelyn Underhill describes it in Practical Mysticism. And before I give you her example, let me give you my example. I wake up in the morning, and to me, there's nothing more pleasurable than waking up in a warm bed with the sensation of the light coming through the window and just the feeling of safety and comfort. However, I tend, unless I consciously stay there, I tend to skip that experience completely and jump immediately into the concerns that I left yesterday, what I need to do today, the concerns about today, other people, and so on. So I jump immediately into my mental world, the mental world that I created within myself. And I miss the chance to be in immediate relationship with that joyful, delightful experience of simply being in the comfort of that moment. In that same way, I notice that I do that in many other situations. When I walk around a beautiful park that I know well, I just skip whatever I see because I'm familiar with it. And familiarity blinds me from the beauty and the special moment that is. So no matter what our philosophical background or religious background is, this is a human condition. This is something that we all do and something that we cannot change and do differently. So Evelyn Underhill in Practical Mysticism, a book that I highly recommend, she wrote it many, many years ago. But Evelyn Underhill was exceptional in the sense that she brought this teaching at a time where there wasn't comments about observation and self-observation and seeing in the way that she put it in her writings. So she says, the real mystical life, which we can also say the real spiritual life, which is the truly practical life, begins at the beginning. Not with supernatural acts and ecstatic apprehensions, but with the normal faculties of the normal person. Sometimes we think that the spiritual life is something kind of out of the ordinary, something that is will come with experiences that are exceptionally different from what we normally experience in the day-to-day living. But she says, this is not how the spiritual life begins. And then she quotes Saint Teresa of Avila, of what Saint Teresa of Avila shared with her nuns at the convent. She said that Teresa told her pupils in meditation I do not require of you to form great and curious considerations in your understanding. I require of you no more than to look. It might be thought that such looking at the spiritual world simply, intensely, without cleverness, such an opening of the eye of eternity, was the essence of contemplation itself. And indeed, one of the best definitions has described that art as a loving sight. So this workshop is, more than anything, an invitation for us to try what it means to see, what it means to look with the eyes of eternity. This is about life challenges. So I want us to be clear about what is it that is challenging us. And the way I could summarize it is by saying that what challenges us is everything that comes up unexpectedly. We expect ourselves to be healthy. We expect ourselves to live forever, even though we know we won't. We expect things to go in the way they have always been. And life surprises us with challenges, the unexpected. So whether it is disease, whether it's temporary or chronic, whether it's curable or not, whether it leaves a certain amount of damage. We have life challenges that are related to loss, losing a loved one, separations, moving, divorce, forced migrations, as we're seeing in the world. Tremendous, tremendous losses. We have life challenges that are constant, that have to do with interpersonal relationships, that are our families, our partners, our friends, our co-workers. These are the challenges that we experience day by day. We come home and we talk about how hard the day was because of our co-workers, or we go to work and we tell our co-workers how hard life was because of our family members, and so on, right? And there are life challenges that have to do more with external experiences that come to us, like job instability or financial instability, lack of opportunities sometimes, and that are very much related to social challenges of class, of education, of gender identity, sexual orientation, and many more. So I want to make sure you know that I don't have a degree in psychology, and that everything that I will share with you today comes from my own understanding of some teachings and the way I have navigated through life challenges. The teachings that we will explore today, and we of course have to narrow it down to some teachings. We can't explore all the Theosophical teachings in one workshop. So the ones that I chose to explore come from one of the schools of Hindu philosophy, that is Advaita Vedanta. And in this school of philosophy, we had, there was this phenomenal teacher, was called Shankaracharya, or Adi Shankara. And he had his own teacher. He was a compiler of the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. And one of his most famous books is the Viveka Chudamani, which is, these are two Sanskrit terms that mean the crest jewel of discernment, the crest jewel of discrimination. At the time, the teachings were given orally. This is a treatise that is written in Sanskrit, and all these verses, I believe there are like hundreds of them, 500 of them or so. All these verses are written in Sanskrit. And what the beauty of Sanskrit is that you can sing it. These are songs. So you chant these teachings, and that's the way you remember them. So the crest jewel of discernment, the crest jewel is the jewel that is at the top of a crown. And so it has this symbolic meaning of being like the most important jewel. And in this case, it has to do with discernment. Much, much, much later, after the Theosophical Society was founded, there was, you probably have heard of Jiddu Krishnamurti, who was a member of the society, who wrote a book that is called At the Feet of the Master, in which he recorded the teachings he received from his own master. And these teachings, the ones that are written at the feet of the master, are just a version of the crest jewel of discernment. And they are probably more approachable in the way they were written and very, very practical. So I highly recommend both of them as a comparison. So as I was saying, Advaita Vedanta is, Vedanta comes from the word Veda, which comes from the teachings, the Hindu teachings. Vedanta refers to the final part of the Vedas, or also the goal of the Vedas. And Advaita is a Sanskrit term that means not two. So the primary teaching of Advaita Vedanta is that there are not two things in the universe. There is no duality. And that's why it's called sometimes non-duality. And this refers to the idea that there's only one being. There's nothing else in the universe but just one being. So consequently, the self, the individual self that we usually write with capital S, is the same as the highest reality, or Brahman, as this is called in the Hindu tradition. So this in itself is already transformative if we know how to use it, if we keep it in us as we go along our day. The fact that there is nothing but oneness, that there's no two things. To make it a little bit more explicit in the way the teachings are presented, there are three fundamental points in the teachings of Shankaracharya. And the one is the one I just mentioned, the first one, that the absolute Brahman is the one reality. The second teaching is that periodically this one reality manifests in this that we see as a universe. It manifests in this visible universe. But the teaching says that the universe in which we live is illusory. It's a phenomenon. It's called, that is, the word for illusion in Sanskrit is Maya. So that doesn't mean at all that this world that we live in is not real. But it means, as one theosopher put it very succinctly, it means that its reality differs from its appearance, that it is not what it seems to be, and that it is our limited perception, our current limited perception that makes us believe this is real. But eventually, when our own perception expands, we will realize the level of illusion in which we were involved. So sometimes the image of being in a dream is used. This feeling that we have when we're in a dream, and we believe that to be completely true and completely real. And the moment we wake up and know that that wasn't really true, or that wasn't really real. It was real in its own context. It was real in that experience, but not when we stepped out of it. And then the third element of the teaching is that the true self in us, there is a self in all of us that is not different from the absolute or Brahman. So there is oneness in all. Now let's talk a little bit about this element of life being a dream. And how can that help us in the day-to-day experience? When my daughter was 6 years old, she woke up one morning and told me, I had this dream that I was in danger, and I was scared, and I was holding on for my life from a rod, and I was holding on with my two hands, and all of a sudden, she said, I realized that I was dreaming, that I was in a dream. So as soon as I realized I was dreaming, so I said, what did you do? And what did you do when you realized you were dreaming? And she said, I let go. So this is not to say, again, that what happens in life is not important, or the suffering that I feel or the suffering that others feel is not important. What it means is that it can soften the impact that life can have on us. At least it does it for me. And every time I feel very heavy about any experience that I'm having, and I bring the image of this having a certain level of illusion, it immediately softens the impact that is having. There is this Spanish writer and poet who wrote a play that is called Life is a Dream. And at some point in the play, there is this character that comes into the stage and says these words, which are in the form of a poem. In Spanish, the poem is a lot more beautiful, but in English, it's I think it does justice to the meaning of the poem. So the poem says, we live while we see the sun, where life and dreams are as one. And living has taught me this: man dreams the life that is his until his living is done. The king dreams he is king, and he lives in the deceit of a king, commanding and governing. And all the praise he receives is written in wind, and leaves a little dust on the way when death ends all with a breath. Where then is the gain of a throne that shall perish and not be known in the other dream that is death? Dreams the rich man of riches and fears, the fears that his riches breed. The poor man dreams of his need, and all his sorrows and tears. Dreams he that prospers with years, dreams he that feigns and forgoes, dreams he that rails on his foes. And in all the world I see, man dreams whatever he be, and his own dream no man knows. And I too dream, and behold, I dream I am bound with chains, and I dream that these present pains were fortunate ways of all. What is life? A tale that is told. What is life? A frenzy extreme, a shadow of things that seem, and the greatest good is but small, that all life is a dream to all, and the dreams themselves are a dream. Pedro Calderón de la Barca is the name of a poet. This is a profound poem, and it invites us to see not only that life as a whole can be a dream, but also that we make our own dream in the way we want. If you talk to a person that you've known for a while, whether it is at work or family or friends, you know more or less what their dream is. You know what their story is. You know what is the story that they're telling themselves over and over again. So the question for all of us today is, what is our dream? What is the dream that we are thinking is our dream? What is the story that we tell ourselves every day of who we are, of what others are doing, of what my problems are, and so on? In this book, in the Vivekachudamani and At the Feet of the Master, the first qualification that they say is required for us to discover our dream is discernment. And I'll offer the Sanskrit word always because Sanskrit is such a rich language. And when you get to know a word in Sanskrit, it's never represented by its English translation. So in the teaching, they say that discernment is essential. And the discernment of what? And they explain that the discernment of between, the discrimination between what is real and what is unreal, what is permanent and what is transitory, what is the self and the no self, what is important and what is unimportant. So let's start by looking at our own lives in the discernment of what is real and what is unreal. It is hard for us to know, to distinguish what is the dream that we're dreaming. People usually call that our blind spot. We can see in others what their problem may be. It's so hard to see where it is that I am stuck. And so the clue that they give us to distinguish between what is real and what is unreal is that what is real is permanent. What is real is the self. What is real is important. And the unreal is everything that is transitory. That is consequently the no self. And that is unimportant for that reason. Unimportant in the sense that it is not the essential thing of life. So beginning by the permanent and the transitory, let's look at our own experience and see how we relate to this. There is a recommendation in the book Light on the Path by Mabel Collins that says, live neither in the present nor the future, but in the eternal. So here we see the distinction between what is permanent and what is transitory. And if you look at your own life and your own experience, what is it transitory? The physical body is transitory. It is constantly shifting. They say that in 7 years, all the cells are new. So we cannot even say that the body that we had 7 years ago was the same body. We have a sense of linear time. So we have experienced this body, and for that reason we think it is the same body we have had. But this is a new body, in some way every day, in real scientific terms every 7 years. So the body is transitory, and of course it has an end. It will have an end. Life in this body has an end. Our thoughts are also transitory. We may feed a certain thought, a certain type of thought that is creating the story and that is creating the dream. The thoughts in itself shift and drift and come and go. And the same with emotions. So this teaching corners us to look within and find out what is the permanent in us, in our own experience. What is the permanent? From experience, the only thing that I could say is permanent is this part of me that knows to be alive. This part of me that says, I am something. I am alive. I am a being. I have consciousness. That is the only thing that has stayed with me permanently throughout time. So the recommendation of the teaching is that for us to place ourselves in what is permanent, we have to live in this sense, in this space in which there is an experience of that is beyond time, that is not confined in time, but there is outside the circle of time. If we live in the present, in our current culture, when we talk about living in the present, people are usually referring to living in the eternal now, in that sense of eternity that we can perceive in this moment. But Light on the Path says, don't live in the present in the sense of, don't live in the present of your story. Don't live in the present of your dream, of the present that you have built with the past, of the personal identity you have created. Don't live in that present, or in the future that you create with the dream, in the future that you create with the story. Live in the eternal, which is space that is behind that or beyond that, or that is detached from the dream and the story. The teaching says the discernment between the self and the no self. So again, what is it the self and what is it the no self? The teaching said the self is one with everything. The no self is the rest. So whenever we have an experience that is separate from others, that is of our own identity, then we are experiencing the no self. In the Vivekachudamani, Shankaracharya says, this is a beautiful, beautiful metaphor. It says, of the tree of samsara, ignorance ignorance is the seed. The identification with the body is its sprout. Attachment, its tender leaves. Work, its water. The body, its trunk. The vital forces, its branches. The organs, its twigs. The sense objects, its flowers. Various mysteries due to diverse works are its fruits. And the self is the bird sitting on the tree. So this is a phenomenal image to work with throughout life and life challenges. The self is really the witness of all that is happening, and we are that. This is what the teaching and we have seen not only through Shankaracharya, but through so many other teachers after them, to emphasize, hey, the only thing you need to realize is that you are that bird sitting on the tree, and you're nothing that is involved in the formation, in the experience of the tree. So obviously, when we position ourselves in that place, that can come to us in various different ways, obviously things begin to have a different impact. What is really important and what is unimportant will become a lot clearer. Sometimes we struggle to know what's important and what is not. And we tend to think that all of it is important. Because if it has to do with myself, if it has to do with what I want, with it, or with my need, or with whatever it is, projection, etc., it becomes important. But then when we step back or outside the tree and sit on it and contemplate it with compassionate, non-judgmental eyes, the seeing that we were talking about at the beginning, that seeing is what changes us. When there is that direct seeing of the tree and the stories and the dream we're in, with non-judgmental, compassionate eyes, there is transformation. As Jean de Salzman says, that, she says, is an act. That seeing in itself is transformational. We, I don't know, all these fantasies that we make ourselves about the spiritual path, and when it comes to this, we realize that the spiritual path is something so much more closer than we think it is. It is right here, right now with us at every moment. This is the spiritual path.